Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the Tuesday, September 16th edition of the Daily Pulse. I'm your host, Teddy Panos, coming here from the WellPoint Studios here in beautiful, historic downtown Lowell. As you probably guessed from the first camera angle, it's not a Trigger 'em Tuesday, so I'm not going to piss you off all by myself today. Instead, I've got my co-host today, none other than Melanie Gilbert from the Lowell.
Good morning, Teddy.
Good morning, Melanie.
It's been a while.
It has been a while.
Thank you for having me back.
I feel like I took most of August off, to be honest with you.
Good.
And yes,
that's a European way.
I needed it. Yes, exactly. I'm on the Greek plan.
Exactly.
So, how are you doing? How was your end of the summer?
Good. You know, I just got back from New York. I went to go see, it was a beautiful Saturday, and spur of the moment, I said to my family, let's go. And we went to go to see the vessel. You know, that
Yeah. How was it?
Well, it was great, but they have half of it blocked off. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because of the people who died by suicide off of that thing, but they have roping all around it. So your view isn't unobstructed, but it's not complete. You know what I mean? But it was cool. It's super cool.
Yeah. I used to do that regularly. I used to just pop in for a weekend every couple of months to New York, go catch a Broadway show. I haven't done that forever.
It was fun. You know, it's a pretty straight shot, obviously. And, you know, it was maybe 3.5 hours. So we drove 7 hours for 2 hours. Isn't that the way
You didn't even do a stayover?
No, well, we walked the High Line, and then we went to the little island, David Geffen's artificial island, which was really cool.
Okay.
And then we walked back through Midtown or whatever that is, and then we came home.
And then drove back to Massachusetts.
And then drove back to Massachusetts, and that was it.
Oh, you've got to at least stay overnight, have some fun.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, but it really was just spur of the moment, and so I'll have to plan more, plan more carefully next time. There's never a shortage of things to do. I have a folder of all the things that I want to do in New York.
Yeah, I'm sure. But unfortunately, you have a folder of things you need to do.
I need to do here,
work,
too, exactly.
Especially since we're in election season. We want to talk about that. The Sunday column a couple of days ago, a big part of it was kind of a recap with the election. And
people can't get enough of that stuff, though. They love reading that.
Exactly. You have a theory about why we saw what we saw. So we want to get to all of that.
Okay.
And break down that and talk about some other things that are happening out there. We're going to get right to it with our special guest co-host today, Melanie Gilbert from the Lowell Sun.
I love the co-host.
Of course you are. Let's first thank my Daily Pulse sponsors, Ray Boutin. He's a licensed realtor in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. You can find him easily enough online at realestaterayBoutin.com. If you're looking to buy or sell a home, a business, or a commercial property, that's where you need to go, realestaterayBoutin.com. He is your person. Thanks as well to our friends at WellPoint, the only health plan offering healthcare benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Thanks, WellPoint. Thanks, Ray. Some other sponsors. We'll thank them in a few minutes. But all right, Melanie, we saw some of your takeaways in the Sunday column about what transpired a week ago today, September 9th, Lowell's preliminary election. But what is your theory after kind of having another week to sit around?
Yeah, I don't get paid for theories, so I can just spit them out like candy. But I think in the news business we have this little saying that if something happens one time, it's random. If it happens 2 times, it's coincidence. If it happens 3 times, it's a story.
Yeah.
Districts 3, 7, and 8 were 3 times. That's a story. So what's the story? Now, unfortunately, I didn't do exit polling. I didn't talk to voters. There were so few of them to talk to.
You should have gone up to the Riley School. That's where the voters
and
were.
these numbers include mail-in.
Yep.
So
mail-in and early.
And early. So the pool from which I had to work from was even smaller. So you might have 41 in precinct 1 in the acre, but maybe 10 people voted all day from 7 to 8. So that was sort of hit and miss. And, I can't approach them in the voting place. I have to wait for them to come out. And typically I don't chase them down. Like if they're walking to their car and I'm over here and they're over there, I don't go running across the parking lot, wait a minute. And because people are a little squirrely about the voting and being approached and stuff. But I would have asked them, who did you vote for? And it can be anonymous. I'm talking to them. They can say, I don't want you to use my name. And I would respect that. But who did you vote for and why? Because then I think that would sort of give an idea of what's going on here. But I didn't do that, so I can't speculate. But I will speculate this.
Listen, It's a podcast.
It's a
We're all
right,
about
all
the
right.
speculation. I want to hear your theory.
Well,
Let's
here's
go.
my theory.
Okay.
And we should talk about Market Basket, sort of
course.
peripherally. So.
News this morning, as a matter of fact.
Oh, what was it?
They named their new CEO.
Oh, they are not playing. I got to give these women, they're his sisters, a lot of credit, but I digress. So, Marcus Candido, who I didn't even think was a dark horse. He wasn't really on my radar. Looks like he was on a lot of voters' radars. I mean, it's kind of crazy. But he's 25, I believe. Yep. And then you have Rita Mercier, who's probably the senior member of the delegation on the city council. That's a huge age gap. And it's not typically found in our elections. So I just wonder if there's sort of a generational, early days, but if there's a generational shift. Not only do we have two fairly young candidates, Sean McDonough and Marcus Candido. Mm-hmm. I think they're both under 30. But we also have sort of like an old growth council. Probably Corey Robinson is the youngest one on that crew right now, right? Maybe he's in his 40s.
Thinking about it.
He's probably in his 40s.
Corey,
but even
Kim.
Corey, as progressive as he sometimes pitches himself, looks dated next to these two guys. Like, it's really sort of shocking how, and I see that maybe that's a generational divide. It certainly seemed a demographic divide in the voting. So that's where I'm disappointed I couldn't talk to voters, because I would have liked to talk to those voters in the Highlands and say, why'd you vote for this guy? Like, where'd that come from? Did he just get out the early vote? I don't know.
So you would think that, but when I talked to Will Rosenberg, the early voting numbers, there were 158 mail ballots requested. So Marcus Candido, very left candidate, right? Endorsed, and the people who did very well endorsed by a lot of the leftist organizations in town. Some may see that as a plus. Yeah. Others see it as a negative, but we'll find out in November. But mail-in voting, early voting, is a big push of theirs, and we didn't see that. It was 158 mail-in ballots requested, and there were 221 people. Forgive me, Will, if I got that number wrong, who voted early in person.
In person.
So about 379 early votes.
Right.
Out of. Not a lot.
Just over 2,000.
Out of about 2,500.
Right.
So it was a very minimal percentage. And certainly of the percentage that registered to vote, I think it was 1.2%.
Right. According
to my math. So the bulk of people who voted for these candidates actually showed up on Election Day.
The ones that showed up.
Yeah, the ones that showed up. And Marcus, you're right, Marcus was clearly the story to me of Election Day. Him topping the ticket in a race where most people predicted he was finishing third.
Right. And, Jose Cervantes from the Acre said he walked 14,000 steps on Election Day alone, which I think is an interesting metric. But in contrast, Candido said he knocked on 1,000 doors going up to Election Day. And that's what I put in the column. It's the retail politics that won. It's the talking to people eye to eye, face to face. I think a lot of people think, and they could be right, I don't know. I'm not on social media, so I don't get my content unless I'm tuning into your podcast. But I come through your site for that.
There you go. There's multiple ways to consume your information.
Yeah, and I think people equate Facebook and maybe Insta and TikTok or whatever platform they're using as media. And I'm not sure the voters see it that way. I'm not sure that Marcus had a very active Instagram, somewhat active Facebook, because after the election, I got on all their pages and looked them up. I try not to be influenced by that stuff because I want them to send me their collateral. But I don't think that worked this time. Just having a regular presence, it's almost like the incumbents were wallpaper. People are already used to seeing them. So doing social media, I'm not saying they have to do podcasts, but they need to get out and, walk the beat. And that's what I said. The door hangs, maybe, but it's really knocking on the door. The phone call, the phone banks. Marcus apparently ran a very active phone bank operation, which I've never heard of in Lowell.
Well, and which points to their organizations behind these folks.
Oh, that's a good point. They're used to doing that.
Marcus, you're one person knocking on 1,000 doors. Did he personally knock on 1,000 doors? Or did people canvass for him? Did he personally call all these folks and engage them? Or are other people doing it for him?
Right.
He's
a union organizer. He has a background in union, and that's like tried and true, that retail politics with the union. So that's the more I got to know about him, the more both scared and awed.
Very
I
well spoken candidate.
Yeah.
He had a phenomenal interview with me.
Yeah.
And again, I'll point out he's far too left in his policy positions, but he can explain them. He has.
What do you mean? He
behind
wants childcare. He wants
Well,
transportation.
I
he
mean,
wants.
Can we be honest for a minute here?
Sure, Teddy.
How much childcare and how much transportation is your city council going to provide?
Right. Well, I think that's why he's running.
Issues. He sounds more like a state rep candidate.
Oh, that's
that
interesting.
said, he said something really interesting here when his introductory podcast with me, where he painted himself as the outsider, as the challenger. Now, everyone kind of assumed it was going to be, how much would Francisco Maldonado dig into John Dakota? What everyone thought was going to be Dakota won.
Right.
How much does Maldonado dig in? And he specifically said on this podcast, he goes, to me, Dakota and Maldonado are the establishment. He took Francisco's nearly 3 decades on the police force and said, yeah, you might as well have been a city council. You were the part of the police department. I'm the change candidate. I'm the difference.
Yeah.
And I thought it was brilliant. I didn't know if it would work, but I remember saying, if he's going to finish second and get in the general election, he did the right thing, because you need to differentiate yourself from your opponents in order to give people a reason to vote for you. Because if you're the same as your challengers and the incumbent,
we've talked
then why
about
not
that
just vote for the
before.
incumbent,
Right.
Why change if you're not going to be the different candidate, right?
Well, that's super interesting, and that goes to our how we let off this conversation about the generational, perhaps an emerging generational divide. You know, like Markey, Senator Ed Markey wants to be the change agent at 80. I'm not sure people are going to go for that.
Well, he's parading around with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, so he's making a legitimate effort, but will that help him in Massachusetts?
Well, and that's the party machine coming out and lining up and giving endorsements as almost simultaneously with his press release.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he had it all lined up. So that's party politics. You know, Lowell City Council isn't Democrat or Republican. It's really sort of like all call in a way. But you know what I mean? Like
it isn't in that you don't put the initial next to them on the ballot, but you're seeing that that's becoming a thing.
Oh,
right?
I understand. Right. And that's what I'm saying is that being a change agent when you've been on the council for 20 or 30 years, even 10 years, might be a hard sell if that's what the voters are looking for. I don't know how to interpret this data. It's all over the map. I mean, it's not really all over the map. For instance, Paul Rathayem, he lost to Lang in this precinct 3, 4, and 2. And he told me that. He said he knows he has weaknesses in those precincts. I think I put that in the column. And that he's going to really double down and concentrate on that. But he not only lost to Lang, to Sydney, but he also lost to Cervantes in precinct 3 and precinct 2. Those are considerable weaknesses, and that's no slant on Paul. These are facts. You know, fact is those voters in those precincts didn't show up. So is he being seen as part of the establishment? And somebody, the cowboy, the black, I love his visuals. The cowboy wearing Cervantes, even, you know, a newcomer out of nowhere, no name recognition, but really, you know, really brought it. Was able to eat away at that. Incumbency is not protective.
And that's the $1 million question that I think we just had a conversation before I hit record about it. Is it a case of their voters didn't show up, or is it a case of their voters are now gone because they don't like it? And in District 7 and 8, we'll put Belvedere aside. That was a different animal. But so in District 7, the acre, 340 voters showed up to vote. There were 535 in the general election in 2023. So that's a drop off of 195 voters.
Right.
Paul Yem got, I think, like 330 votes of those 535 in 2023. He got 106 votes.
Right.
So he lost over 200 votes, or 200 votes didn't show up who are still inclined to vote for him and support him, but just didn't on this night. So what happens on November 4th will be largely determined by which scenario.
It's a tricky business. You got to get your people to show up, because now he has the taint of being, and I say this in kindness, of a loser. And if you know the voters like to vote for a winner.
Everyone likes to back the winner.
You know, we should talk about Belvedere because they're the anomaly. Like, everything I've just said, generational gap, change agent, was not true in Belvedere.
Correct.
Gendron, who I thought would do better, didn't. She's young.
I was stunned that she finished fourth.
Yeah, she has both name recognition and involvement in the city council or in the board of health. So she's out there. I think she ran a decent campaign, and she placed fourth. You have an established guy, Corey, who kind of positions himself as an outsider, not as far an outsider as 𝐏𝐥𝐤𝐥𝐲 does. He plays nice, but he's also sort of pushing, you know, and that didn't play. So you had two people. And you don't know how much of that is from being appointed versus being elected and those people just holding a grudge. But that's what I mean.
There's a bunch that held a grudge. I've spoken to a bunch that, and one in particular had been a Belanger supporter in the past. He said, I don't like the way it happened.
Yeah.
And now, Corey didn't appoint himself.
No.
And if you remember that night, both Erin Gendron and Belinda Duran showed up saying, if you're going to appoint somebody, make it me. They did say, I prefer we do an election.
Right.
So, you know, it's funny, if the council had appointed them, what would have happened on September 9th if it was Gendron or Duran who had gotten appointed? But you're right. I didn't even think about that. So they went with the young guy, the change in District 8, the Upper Highlands, but went with, you never call a lady out for her age, but Belinda Duran is the oldest of the four candidates in Belvedere, and she
I don't say age, I say generation.
Generation.
She's a different generation.
You're a kind of...
But she pitched herself as a change agent. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of interesting. And because she doesn't have a track record, she can kind of pull it off. I'm a new voice. I'm a new face. I'm a new voice. Although she's been established in the community for a while. Very active.
She's very active. She has some very well-known, established, powerful people behind her. And she ran a great campaign.
She did.
I thought her debate performances were great.
I saw the Belvedere particularly was very strong.
She didn't sound like a challenger. She didn't sound unsure of herself on certain things. And I thought she ran a great campaign.
I don't know if she ever was a trial lawyer, but she certainly presented her case.
That's what you're supposed to make an opening and a closing.
She didn't do any of the likes and the ums and the yas and the pauses, awkward pauses. She just she really brought it. She did a good job. So it's hard, it's hard to suss out what really went down. You can only look at the individual districts the individual districts. And I think 3 is the one to watch. And honestly, the Highlands is the one to watch. He could be a come back kind of candidate.
John Dakota or
No, Candido.
Oh, Candido, okay.
Well, by that we'll see if he can translate that success last Tuesday into a broader coalition.
273 votes Marcos Candido got. I went back to 2023. In the general election, it was John Dakota versus Ty Chum. Now, granted, Ty Chum didn't really campaign.
Is that right?
He pretty much dropped out. He had run in 2021 against 𝐏𝐥𝐤𝐥𝐲, but he got 370 something votes.
Okay.
Candido got 273. Dakota got 801 in 2023. He got 265 this time.
Wow.
And I know that in talking to John Dakota, he said to me, he rattled off a list of names of people that are supporters of his, signs, everything, and they didn't turn out to vote.
Well, you never know.
For whatever reason, they didn't turn out to vote.
Teddy, people will tell you to your face, the sky is blue, and it's nighttime.
And then go in the voting booth and do
right. You
different.
Never know, and that's why exit polling is tricky too. But I do think, speaking of that generational divide, maybe I should frame it differently and just say, I wonder if the city council is kind of stale, that voters are kind of not fired up about that composition. And they're looking for something different. And I don't know. I mean, maybe the current candidate. To me, Candido and Belanger and Finn and Lang suggests that they're looking for something different. And that's what I said in the column.
And in the preliminary, it certainly seems to be the case. I will caution folks that I've seen a number of elections where what happens in September isn't what happens in November. I look at the Dakota case, excuse me, for example, but 801 votes. Has he ticked off some of them? Probably.
Yeah.
Has he ticked off 550 of them to drop to like 265? I think he's going to get, if he gets to 600, which is still a good size drop off, right? Can Candido get to 600?
Right.
Did all his voters come out
transition
in the preliminary because he's a He's a new candidate. He's working it. The generational thing you talked about, how much more meat is on the bone
right.
for Marcos Candido, whereas for John Dakota, there's some meat on that bone.
Right.
Can he chew it?
Right. Well, right. Or, or is this like training wheels, the preliminaries training wheels, and, he's going to be on a two-wheeler by November. I don't know. It's really uncertain. But I do think and this is my bias, I like a little friction. I love conflict. That's where the good stories happen. So there's a lot of conflict going on here. Not so much in Belvedere, because that conflict has already happened. But, in the other two districts, we're going to see if it's a shift. And if it is, then I think going forward, we're going to see a lot more competition. Right. This is the kind of thing that opens the doors to future involvement. People think, oh, wait a minute, even if you lost, you win. And if you win, then you're golden. So I think when I was thinking quietly about this and taking out the personalities and just look at the demographics and the geography, is that maybe there are these little subtle shifts going on in Lowell, that a younger or more engaged, let's keep age out of it, a more engaged voter is entering the race. Belvedere's always been engaged, but in the other places, and we can see that from the turnout, even in a preliminary, Belvedere had 14%, the Acre had 4%. That was why it was so hard to find voters.
You were in the wrong district.
Yeah, I was
Melanie.
in the wrong district. And then District 8, the Highlands, had almost 8%. But, is there something else sort of we'll look back 5 years from now and say, that's when it started in the 2025 election.
Right. Well, there's one more factor I want to throw in there that kind of jives with what you're saying. What did we see? We'll get to it with our special guest host, Melanie Gilbert from the Lowell Sun. Let me just quickly thank all of our Daily Pulse sponsors. Of course, you know about Ray Booten, licensed realtor in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Find him online, realestaterayBooten.com. Thanks as well to our friends at WellPoint. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Thanks as well to Washington Savings Bank, banking that goes the extra mile. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, TMI Cares, developing and managing their own properties for over 30 years. Experience the quality, the care, and the value of making TMI the choice for your home. Thanks as well to Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection, a generation of families since 1925. The Greater Lowell Community Foundation, improving the quality of life through strategic, impactful philanthropy. By the way, fun fact we shared from the GLCF on Facebook yesterday. They've got 388 scholarship funds established in our various communities.
Wow.
Here. Pretty
That's
cool.
A good story, yeah.
Making a difference for generations to come.
Yep.
And of course, last but certainly not least, our friends at Francis E. Prevention Insurance, the agency Greater Lowell is counted on to insure its most valuable assets since 1982. Continuing our discussion with Melanie.
So what's your idea?
Gilbert. So you've talked about a generational change, and is there a change coming in the cities? Or maybe people are unhappy and they want to see change on the council. That I've heard that theory in play. I've heard the left flexed its muscles theory.
And is that a bad thing? I mean, I think I'm being provocative, but I don't think anybody should take the voter for granted.
No, if that's where the community is heading, then it's heading there. That's what democracy is all about.
Yep.
I do wonder, though, how much of that, if in the organizations that were supporting some of these candidates who were successful, in Marcos Candido, you mentioned off your Solidarity Lowell, one of my favorite targets, right? The local Marxists. Is Lowell, are the Upper Highlands ready to support somebody who the left is rallying around, the left pushing for housing at all costs, as opposed to, what we saw in the Highlands when Mary Burns was trying to build on a lot that was said to be too small. In Belvedere, Belinda Duran, very, very, she's a left-leaning candidate. Now, I don't think she's at that extreme, but, in Belvedere, they're not going to, they killed the ADU
They're not gonna vote in a red diaper baby.
Exactly. They killed the ADU thing. Never mind, the elimination of single-family zoning or row houses on Rogers Street or wherever the case may be.
Or the high school, I hear.
Or the high school, exactly. So that's where I'm kind of conflicted. Like, I could see that the left was certainly much more organized, and I think other than Cory Belanger, I think the two incumbents who ironically didn't win but lived to fight another day, I just simply think they didn't work. And, now one of them I think has a good chance to come back. The other one's got a lot of work to do. Paul Ratajem has a lot of work to do to make up
He
those
knows it too. He
42
said that.
votes.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. He knows it. But how much of this is the left in Lowell kind of rising up again, as they kind of did in the left in Lowell era? If you remember, early in the days of blogs, there was this famous blog called Left in Lowell that had kind of
clever.
risen and, and some of their folks became activists in the community and, established a foothold. And there was a period where they thought they had real political clout and they were getting people elected. And then 2013, they got kind of slapped back and slapped down. But they never went away.
Yeah.
So how much of this, Melanie, might be the left is, gaining steam in this political climate?
Well, I don't think it's a red or a blue issue. I do think it's a stale or change agent issue. And I think when you watch, and here's a little aside, when the city council finally decides to come back,
One
I
more month of summer schedule.
I can't believe they're not coming back. They need all the prime time they can get. But
the irony is the only meeting they had in August was when everybody was in.
Right.
Oh,
no, they canceled that meeting.
They canceled that meeting, but one of the September meetings was on election night where half of them were not there.
So, I just speaking on that, I guarantee that when they come back, when is it? September next Tuesday?
Next Tuesday, and then
they're going to be like 1,000 motions in that meeting because they're all going to have something to say. They're all going to pitch them. I wonder if they're going to all pitch themselves as change agents. But I feel like the city council is stale. And the reason I say that is I've only been in this town 3 years and we're talking about the same things. We're still talking about needles. We're still talking about homeless. And I know some of these are intractable, but it feels like if you're tracking the council's work, you might feel as if they're running in circles, and you might feel like, well, give somebody else a chance. And I wonder, I don't know, but I wonder if that's partly what's going on.
So you met one of the issues you mentioned, two of them, homeless, needles. Needles have popped up. The last time the council did meet, there were two
crack
motions.
pipes, let's throw those in there.
A story that you're working on that we will talk about someday. But, there were two motions to ban the distribution of needles within 1,000 feet of schools and 1,100 feet of city parks. So, and then you wrote an article about the mayor saying, let's ban the distribution altogether.
Right. Because our surrounding communities aren't doing it. And this speaks to 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲's point, is why is Lowell carrying all the water for the entire Merrimack Valley area? He's not wrong about that. So Lowell is the only one in this immediate area that does needle exchange.
So does that become a campaign issue for the November elections? For
the stale candidates, yes.
Do the candidates who want to say, let's ban these, do they come forward? And
it
who
could be.
Are there candidates that are okay with this? And
Danny's savvy enough to plant those little. He's a savvy operator.
Danny being Mayor Danny Rourke.
Mayor Danny Rourke. He's savvy enough to plant those little seeds to sort of, create juice.
Yeah, and if you're a challenger who
start banging that needle drum,
tends to be you're getting supported from some of these left groups. Well, then Solidarity Lowell, Solidarity Lowell, and Llama, and all these different groups are out there saying, give the homeless the keys to the city.
Needles for everybody.
Let them run the city. Let them occupy the city council. Needles for everybody.
Right. That's not a winning campaign slogan.
Okay, so thank you, because you're far left of me, right? I'm far right of you.
Why we get along so well, Teddy.
But even you realize handing out needles to an area where you have a major drug problem and it's leading to other issues, including housing and vagrancy and quality of life for the elderly and students and whatnot, that's not a winning issue. If you're an incumbent counselor, and here's an issue that I think, it's
very clear.
You put Marcos Candido. If you're John Dakota, you put Marcus Candido on the spot about that. If you're Paul Ratajem, you put Sidney Liang on the spot about that. If you're I don't know, Belinda Duran, and I'm going to guess that both Belinda Duran and Dan Fair will say, let's ban it, period. No needles in Belvedere at all.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a good one.
But, again, that race is a completely different animal. But
that's a different race.
In the Highlands and the Acre, those become issues. So too will the homeless issue, I think. So whether the candidates make it such,
well, and we'll hope they
out.
do, because again, I don't want to put my thumb on the scale, but these are good issues. And when you have candidates that are diverse and you actually have contested races, we're not having these conversations in the city council. They didn't even meet half the summer. We have to have these conversations. And if these candidates, challengers, and incumbents start to do that, I think that's good for the city, and I think that's good for democracy. Speaking of the needles, I was schooled by Lisa Golden when she gave her testimony before the council. It's kind of questions you don't even know to ask. I did not know. You can bring one pen and exchange it and get 10 pens back. So you take one needle.
Wait, hold on.
You can the needle.
I thought it was
exchange.
a one-for-one exchange.
No,
that's not a needle exchange.
No.
That's a needle
and that's
charity
a giveaway,
draw.
right?
Yeah.
And I put that in my article because I never even thought to ask a question because I assumed, which I'm not supposed to do, but it seemed logical that if I'm an addict, I'm a substance use abuser, and I come to the needle exchange van run by Riverbend, sponsored by Lowell Community Health Center, and I come to them and I give them a needle, they give me a needle back. No. You give them a needle, they give you a pack of 10 that has not been opened. You give them 11 to 19 needles, you get 20 needles. Like, so I don't know why we're not hiring the homeless to pick up all the needles. Pick up all the needles because they don't have to. Because all they have to do is pick up one and they get 10. Like, that's messed up. Right there, if I was a counselor, and that's why I say we better see like 1,000 motions at that next meeting. That is a motion. Like, how do we change? That doesn't seem like that's helpful. That doesn't seem like harm reduction.
Yeah, which is another thing. I'm also, if the needle ban is popular, and again, we won't know. We'll know November 4th. We'll have a better idea depending on the
There's
positions
8
the
weeks,
candidates
Teddy.
take.
I think we're going to hear a lot.
But harm reduction zones.
Right.
Some of these groups that have been very politically active and helped get the vote out in September, they're okay with quote unquote harm reduction zones, aka shooting galleries, or the middle word, safe injection sites.
Right.
But these are the kind of issues.
Otherwise known as South Common, I think. What the heck?
No, now Bishop Mark.
Yeah. Right. Bishop Mark. Right.
But these are the kind of issues that, again, they were dormant in the preliminary, maybe because I think some folks took their spot for granted. Will they make it an issue when they get out there and do the work?
That's interesting. I see your point, too, about maybe the most engaged voters came out for the preliminary. Because, the summer is sleepy. People are on vacation. They're not consuming as much news. I can tell you our internal metrics drop on stories, no matter how wonderful they are. Right. So maybe really only hardcore people came out, and that skewed the numbers. I don't know. But I do think, here's another thing, is that the crack pipes, that ordinance has been on the books since I want to say the mid-2000, 2010 or 13. It's not a new ordinance, but we've never enforced it.
And by the crack pipes, you're talking about the news that came out that a number of businesses were cited for distributing quote unquote crack pipes.
Yeah, they're cylinders. They're little, like a straw, but short, like about this big. And inside is a rose. And you go in, and for like $2, I want to try and buy one.
So,
don't put it in the column. Low reporter.
You want to just buy the thing, or you want to use it?
Yeah.
Lowell Sun Reporter.
So it's legal if you put the rose in it. And so all they do is they dump out the rose and they smoke the crack.
So this was my question. How are they marketing it? Obviously, they don't have a sign that says crack pipes.
No.
Or you go ask the clerk, where are the crack pipes? And he says aisle 6.
Right. I think they're behind the counter.
How do they market a rose in a
Yeah, you ask for a rose, a rose pipe or something.
A rose pipe.
I don't know what the language is, but I'm about to find out.
Okay.
After I leave
You're
here.
on it. Okay, good.
But, that was disturbing. Jays, of course, which is sort of the root of a lot of evil. And I'm sure they're wonderful people, but they skate on the line over there. And so they were one of the people cited by the Board of Health. They were not fined. They were warned.
They got the first warning.
Right. 4M, and I took pictures of all these places before I came here, they're right across from the Stocklosa, and they're selling them too. And then Discount Liquor right by Appleton, across from just a block away from the old Owl Diner, it was cited. But you could cite, I got a lot of text messages and emails from readers who said, you can cite a bunch of, they didn't even go to the tobacco stores yet. These are like the liquor stores, like the obvious or the convenience stores. But if you go to the liquor stores, you're going to find that for sure. So it seems like there's a lot of bank to be made in enforcing that. And they want the ordinance
But the ordinance has been there for a while.
Yeah, and the ordinance says, in fact, Councilor Corey Robinson raised the issue back in 2023 and asked the city councilor, or it wasn't Corey Williams at the time, but they were talking about that. Can we have an ordinance? And one was already on the books and what they could do. I think it was Corey Williams because I went back and watched the video. And Corey Williams said, well, you already have the power. You can just go out and you should do education first so they're not surprised.
Correct.
That they're not allowed to sell crack pipes. But you should go do education. I don't know if that education took place. But apparently somebody complained and the Board of Health intervened by way of the Inspectional Services Division with Matt Sheehan, who is pretty remarkable. That guy is on it. And he went out and he found 3 violators, and he didn't find them, but he warned them. Whether they're going to, and they did that with the neighborhood response unit. So whether they're going to mount a more aggressive action, I don't know. But that seems low, not slim pickings, but low-hanging fruit.
Low-hanging fruit.
Yeah,
Right.
because it's $300 per cylinder. So if you have boxes and boxes of these things in storage, and your ordinance forbids you from having them and selling them, and you have like 3,000 cylinders.
Wait, $300
per cylinder.
to buy a little glass?
No, for the fine. I'm sorry.
Oh, the fine. Oh,
to
okay.
buy it,
okay.
to buy it is $2 or something.
Okay, so I was going to say, where are the people who are using it as crack pipes finding the money?
Right.
So it's $2.
Well, they're turning in their needles, Teddy. Come on. They're getting one needle, getting 10, and then selling them
to diabetics.
Come on, stay up.
That world is so far. You're talking to somebody who never even smoked a joint. I'm so I'm embarrassed to say that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I never.
That world is so foreign to me that I'm stunned.
I'm getting an education. I had no idea.
You can literally go in and buy a rose, a product,
a rose in a glass
pipe that is.
Then you take out the rose. Right. There's no other use for it. And
Crazy.
under the ordinance, each cylinder is $300 fine. So they could swoop in. I'm sure they're going to do education. But, that's another talking point. And that's what I mean about stale, is that we're still talking about some of the stuff, and we already had the means, the motive, and the opportunity to execute it. So what's the holdup? And with the crack epidemic, or with the overdoses, just to circle back to harm reduction, I thought Mayor Danny Rourke raised a good point, and he called Director Lisa Golden of Health and Human Services out on that. She said, Narcan it's saved a lot of lives, 67 overdoses, or 67 people were rescued with Narcan. And he said, well, that's not harm. That's different from harm reduction. That's Narcan. So Narcan is skewing the harm reduction numbers. They would have been dead otherwise.
Correct.
I mean, that's not his point, but his point is you can't harm reduction dead people. So Narcan is a harm reduction, but it's heavily weighted in that one area. When there's a whole area of harm reduction, including interventions, treatment, that kind of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Development. You that's a word you mentioned when you first came in as well. You're shocked at how much is going
all
on
of a sudden
in the city. My father says that because he drives in from Drake and cuts through the acre.
Oh, sure.
And you've got so much, especially in the acre. But you cited 2 or 3 projects in downtown alone going on right in the gym.
Well, your mom or your dad probably drove past Acre on Suffolk Street, and what I can't remember, right by across from the North Common. Yep. That's a Suffolk place is really in motion. That's going to be.
Yep, that went up almost overnight.
Exactly. I've been stalking it, and one day it wasn't there, and the next they had 3 stories built. And then up on Middlesex, right across from the Lowell Transitional Living Center, the homeless shelter, is the Emory, which just did a groundbreaking last week.
Yep.
That place is going to be transformed. I mean, they've got tons of equipment there. Today, I just went by there today. So that's exciting.
Heritage properties. They'll get that one will spring up overnight too.
They're doing drilling, clearing. I mean, it's amazing. And then what was the other one I took a picture of? And this is all building
on. So there's one on Appleton Street that's taking place.
What's the one on Appleton Street?
There's also the one at the old Crown nightclub, theater, whatever, that's across from the parking garage as well. That is finally moving forward.
Right, and there's that one by the early garage. Same on Middle Street, a little further down from the shelter, has been in development for a long time. Nothing happened as long as I've been here. Now, all of a sudden, they're putting up framing and stuff. So that's right across from the Middlesex registry.
Yes.
Yeah, which got its lease extended for another year, so they're not going
Yeah,
anywhere.
a lot of state money is coming in. Every other week, we're basically getting a press release from the governor's office about a huge $500,000 to $1 million reward.
Yeah, Emory got like
for the creation of housing.
2.7 million or something, which is, and plus he got tithes and tips.
Yep.
So they're really trying to make that work because, as I've reported, that's a leap of faith because that's a complicated area. When I was there, there were 5 police cars and a bunch of cops, low police officers trying to get this guy to take down his tent, which was on the sidewalk. And it was a very belligerent scene. I decided to let them do their job and not take any pictures or interview anybody. I wasn't on that mission. But, I think it's complicated. And then a young student came out, I'm sure he was going to the STEM maybe, or for a bus, came out of an apartment across the street from that, and he's coming out and he's seeing the cop cars and he's seeing, that's big city living on some level, but it's constant. And I just wonder, getting back to the election, when you keep hearing the same thing and the same problems, you get to feel like, well, either there are no solutions, so it doesn't matter what joker I elect, or the ones who are doing the job can't fix it. Maybe I'll give somebody else a chance. I don't know. But this election felt like it was breaking glass, that the voters are perhaps just ready for a change. So we'll see.
Well, yeah, we'll find out in November.
Right.
If what we saw on the preliminary night, if it's a replay, clearly the voters in Lowell want some kind of change. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But with all this development taking place, and ultimately, when people want change, it's because they're unhappy.
Right.
And generally, to win an election, you have to be on the popular side of what you're unhappy about. There's always people who are going to be unhappy about a particular issue. Again, the homeless issue, the needles issue, as we talked about, there are people on each side of it. Where will the mass of the electorate turn out? But in terms of development, you've got all these things that you're talking about. So the people who are screaming about we need more housing, well, you've got, you just rattled off a handful of projects.
I counted 150 in like a 4-block area.
With more promised in the pipeline. We're moving forward.
No, it's not affordable housing.
Right.
It's market rate housing.
You're starting, right. So this is where I think that issue falls.
It's gentrification.
So where are the people on that issue? Where are the people of Lowell on this issue? Is it going to be affordable housing? Is it going to be workforce / market rate housing?
Right.
Because there is a big difference. And, in the acre, in the lower Highlands, they're going to push for affordable, right?
Because that's their demographic.
In the upper Highlands, in Belvedere, Pawtucketville, Centerville, they're going to probably push for workforce / market rate. So there's, again, I think that you're going to see as an issue start to play out. Where is the public on this? Because there is development going on.
Right.
And as you call it gentrification.
I'm not saying that's a bad word.
I think in Massachusetts, it's a natural extension of development because it just costs so much to develop housing in Massachusetts that you can't do it affordably. Now,
you need state support to do it.
You need subsidy, right? Subsidized. So there's affordable or subsidized.
Right. Well, to get affordable, it has to be subsidized.
It has to be subsidized because
although the private is also subsidized, but that's different.
Correct. So
Jeff is getting a lot of money, but housing is expensive.
It's expensive.
So the Lowell Housing Authority that wants to build 120 units over by where the Race Street and Merrimack Street. They're going to build veterans housing, and that's going to be low income housing.
Correct.
And those units are going to cost the same amount to build as what Heritage is building on the corner of Middlesex.
So the taxpayers will pick up the tab.
Doesn't matter where you are.
Housing,
it doesn't matter whether you support market rate or you support affordable. The taxpayer is paying for it.
Correct. So then it becomes an issue. Well, what kind of housing do you want?
Right.
So, this is where I'll be curious to see, because I leave open the possibility that there is that sea change, that shift that you're talking about in the city. I've kind of lived through it a little bit, and then I've seen it go away. But
when you're talking about earlier,
the left and Lowell, but also you can go back to earlier eras where the pendulum always politically
and I don't have that perspective.
Swings. So are we seeing one of those swings? Will it become a permanent swing? Some places swing and it becomes permanent.
Yeah.
So I'll be really curious to see.
Belvedere isn't in charge of the city anymore, so there's no. They can't swing in one direction and take the whole city with them. So that's what's going to be interesting.
Right. But, yeah, they get their council seat and they get their 3 at-large seats that they can kind of
Well,
be the
there you
heaviest
go.
voting
That's
bloc.
right. That's right.
But, it's funny that even there, if you look at the candidates, 2 of them live in the Highlands.
Right.
The 2 of the incumbents, vesna and
he was aligned with Sidney
𝐼𝐥𝐤, right? And he was aligned with Sidney
and Tara
Lang.
Hung.
So that's why I think
State House.
I think ultimately we have all this talk about generational shifts and this and that. Ultimately, I think it's the little thing.
Right, that's a good point.
Well, I won't call them the little things because they're important to the people, but I look at it as, all right, well, who's going to be the next mayor? So you remember after 2021,
Yeah, I don't know.
the elections in 2021, so 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲 became the mayor.
Right.
And we saw rallies at City Hall. I can't remember when you came
I
to
know,
town.
I missed that.
But there were
2022.
rallies at City Hall from 𝐵𝑆𝑛𝐴 supporters who were unhappy that he was passed over for the mayor. They thought as the ticket topper and somebody who was...
𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲 was new.
So 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲 was new to the council. He had been
right.
elected in 2019. He was also elected as a district councilor as opposed to an at-large. So there was some pushback. And we saw candidates run in 2023 who were very, very active in that 𝐵𝑆𝑛𝐴 for mayor thing.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
believe, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Sidney Lang was part of those rallies, as was Susie Chun, who ran in 2023.
She was sign-holding for Sidney, right.
So again, a lot of this is, well, who's going to be the mayor?
Well, if these people win, you can't leave it to chance either.
Correct.
Right.
So, I'm watching election night.
Yeah.
And if I'm 𝐵𝑆𝑛𝐴 and I want to be mayor again, and I believe that is
interesting.
indeed the case, because I don't see why he wouldn't want to be
Right.
mayor.
Sure.
He's been trying to do so for years now. I'm doing cartwheels.
Yeah.
I'm doing cartwheels because 𝐷𝐤𝐤 was a child voter. 𝐷𝐤𝐤 was a Rourke
Right.
voter for mayor. You get him out, the dynamic
Oh, that's
changes.
interesting. Yep.
Candido, where is he? Well, we know he's left. I'm going to bet he's not going to be a Rita Mercier voter.
Right.
if that becomes
That's right. I
a
forgot.
mayoral possibility.
Right. There was talk about that.
Dan Rourke has now gone on the record with our friend Jerry Nutter, as a matter of fact,
correct.
Saturday morning, and Warren Shaw saying,
That's
I
right.
would like another term as mayor. So is Candido a Rourke voter or is he a Noon
Yeah,
voter?
so now the plot thickens.
So I think a lot of it is personality based as well.
Yeah.
So you're saying, where is Joanne? Where is
Which
Finn?
is independent of the voter.
Yes.
Right. So there's two
So there's multiple
plays,
things at play
playing out.
here, right? And then ultimately, is it a referendum on the city manager?
Oh, interesting.
What is
He's okay now. I mean, he's locked down for 5 years.
He's got a contract for 5 years,
Yeah.
but if you make his life miserable enough,
In another 2, it
he
could be
may
another
just
different.
say, I've had enough. I've done my
Right.
part, So because again, I look at the city as a whole, and there's issues, and there will always be. I think
Sure.
housing, homeless,
Sure.
drug, there will always be these issues. There'll always be a constant pull between the left and the right. But ultimately, what I see is you've got an $800 million development at Link that will start at some point, we hope. It will.
I know it will,
It
but-
will start.
Yeah.
You're also now talking the front runner.
But they're building on university land, which is not taxable.
Oh, the private development will be though.
Well, we don't know yet because they haven't come forward with TIFs or ties or any of that stuff yet. They haven't started that process.
My understanding is it will be taxable. The private any classroom type space will be non-taxable. But the front runner city thing has gone from $1 billion to $2 billion to $5 billion to, if you watch my podcast with Mark Healy from last Thursday, billions and billions of dollars. So ultimately, who's going to control that money?
Right.
To me, that's the ultimate issue at play behind the scenes that nobody wants to talk about. But who do you want controlling how that money gets spent, to which projects it's allocated? You kind of saw the same thing in 2021 in that election, and then 2022 with the ARPA money, with kind of the transition from the Donahue administration to the Golden administration. There was a big chunk of money there, $76 million.
Yeah.
Who got to decide how it was spent? that council and that city manager as opposed to a previous council and a previous city manager.
So you're saying that was sort of a transition right there.
Are we going to
Yeah,
see the same
interesting.
thing start to play out over the next 2 or 3 years? Who do the voters of Lowell want controlling
manage
how that
this?
money is
Because that
spent?
is change.
Right?
That
is
change from the outside coming in.
Right.
And who do you want to manage that
Right.
change?
Well, what kind
That's a
of
good point.
projects will it go to? Will it go to affordable housing?
Yeah, that's a really
or
good
will
point.
it go to market rate housing? These are the issues that I'm wondering if the candidates are going to make them an issue. I will. I'm making it one now. But
Right.
if I'm a candidate, I'm being clear on this. And Jerry Nutter wrote it in his Sunday Notes column for us. He talked about if you're Paul Rotz, you better get behind this front runner city thing and tell your district how that's going to benefit them and the voters. I also think the challengers would be very wise to do that. Belinda Duran
There's
has
not
been
enough
brilliant.
information on that. Oh, and Belinda at the Belvedere debate brought up the front runner and said, the reason you should pick me is because I'm a former lawyer and I'm not going to let us basically get taken.
Yeah.
Like Salapoli.
She actually read the book about Richmond Hill and Regent Park in Toronto. She talked about it when she first announced her candidacy. That's when she first impressed me as a candidate. I'm like, all right.
It's a smart move.
She knows where Lowell's future is. So ultimately,
but don't get taken.
Where does she want to see that money spent, and who would she like to see overseeing it besides herself and her 10 council colleagues? Right.
And she was very blunt on that point. She was the only one who spoke to that, who wasn't like rah rah. Well, rah rah, but we bring a lot to the table. We're not just a bridesmaid; we're a bride, and you better meet us at the altar, kind of thing. And I thought that was a very strong position. So yes, I agree. That's a really good point. Is change is a coming.
Follow the money.
Yeah.
Follow the money.
And maybe the voters are sort of sensing that before the electeds are.
I think that's the ultimate.
That's interesting.
Tug of war is.
And they're seeing all this going on. And the incumbents might think, see, I did that. But the voters might be thinking, well, no, this is just sort of the city is growing and changing and.
Right. And also, even if you did do it, what are you going to do with it now that it's here?
Right.
How do you want to spend it?
Right.
So to me, that's that's what I'm waiting to see in November.
Yeah.
Where are they? I could hazard my guess. I know where I'd like to see it spent.
Right.
But again, it's a city of 100,000 plus, 115,000. It's a city of 77,000 registered voters.
Yep.
Of which 10,000 will show up.
Right.
If that. So do elections even tell us where most of the residents in the city stand or a town?
Well, they should. They should. And so maybe that's what we're driving toward. Maybe the electorate is finally growing up and taking more of an interest in the issues. But I agree with you. I think the debate should just be, where do you stand on needle exchange? Where do you stand on affordable housing? Where do you stand on, like real simple things that people can wrap their head around?
And they're all quality of life issues. But they're the things that city councils can affect, right? A needle ban, a glass vial with a rose in it ban, a city council can affect that.
I guarantee.
Childcare?
Well, right. Well, those.
Transit?
I kind of actually liked that one. I put him in the paper today because he was the only one who would speak to that. Yes. And it's in his platform.
Yeah,
so he made the likely
They
quote.
were his top 3 issues from when he launched the campaign.
And I thought this should be, music to his ears. But, like with the crack pipes, that could be a story every day, of how Lowell is cracking down. And I guarantee that would solve a lot of your problem.
I can't believe we cracked down on kratom before we cracked down on crack pipes.
I didn't even know crack pipes was a thing, and that's on me. Who knew that,
I've been here forever.
I could be buying crack pipes for $2.
You're probably displaying them in your house because they look pretty with the rope.
Right. And it's crazy to think that could be a winning issue for the city administration, period. They've got their PR firm, their $1 million PR firm, and I say that just to be jokey. I'm glad they're doing it, but they could have their PR firm doing all sorts of provocative videos and take the high ground on those issues and out progress the progressives. Here we are cleaning up, solving crime, doing harm reduction to all of us, and taking care of business. Enforcing the laws on the books.
Crack down on the crack pipe.
Right. Yeah.
Put that on a campaign.
And so at the Board of
run
Health
with it.
meeting, Lisa Golden said that Cesar, I can't remember his last name. He's the tobacco enforcement officer.
Yes.
Who knew we had
Is he
all
the
these?
guy that goes around and picks up all the needles as well?
No,
Or
no,
that's
no.
a different guy. Okay.
No, Cesar does the tobacco compliance. He gets adults who look like children to go into stores and try to buy things that they're not legally allowed to do. And then he cites them, and they have to come before the board and plead mercy. Otherwise, they get like $1,000 fine and a 7-day suspension. I mean, he runs a tight shop over there. Every time I watch a Board of Health meeting, somebody from the tobacco control is in there pleading, mercy. And Matt Sheehan, who's the inspectional divisions guy who goes around and does the schools and restaurants and stuff, now he's doing, with the Lowell Police Department, a collaborative effort on the crack pipes. That's how they launched that. He could be a force. He could really be, and you could have the PR company following them and doing a crack pipe video.
Lowell undercover.
Yeah, right. But would send a message, and it would send a message on a lot of levels, not just the voter level, but the people who are using those things, that you can't get that stuff here.
Right.
Go to Lawrence,
Melanie Gilbert from the Lowell Sun, a thorough recap of the election,
That was
a
fun.
preview of
Yeah,
the general
your-
election, and we got new issues. We created all these new issues: needle bans, harm reduction, and development for the candidates to actually fight about.
I know, seriously.
We're setting the agenda.
What's that?
We're setting the agenda.
We are setting the agenda. I hope everybody's tuning in, because this is where it happens.
By the way, if some candidate comes out with one of these slogans that we bounced around, I'm going to demand
Which one? Needles for everyone?
Either one. Yeah, I'm going to ask for a consultant's fee.
Yeah, that was, I think you saw the story that the day of the first day of school opening, I was walking around South Common and I found a needle. So I called Andres. He's the one who does the needle pickups, and he came right over and picked it up. But gosh, it just doesn't feel right. I know needles happen. I found him in Arlington where I live, and I called the needle people, but I don't know. I can't just find him in random, just in my everyday walk. And Wayne Jeunesse said at the meeting, they found hundreds of needles in the jams area. I want to find what roof. I got to text him, and he said people were throwing the needles on the roof, and the owner of the business, so they were doing a walkthrough of the jams area, and
yes.
all the needles were on top of this guy's roof, like hundreds or thousands of needles, and he had to hire a private company to clean it up.
Yeah. It becomes a quality
I would have gone
of
up
life.
on that roof and thrown him on the ground, and then I would have called Andres. This guy did it straight.
It's great. The biggest takeaway for me is I didn't realize the needle exchange was not a.
I was
a
shocked.
10 for 1, not a bring one get one. You bring one, you get 10. I mean that's.
Yeah.
I would think even your most
That's self-defeating.
progressive candidates would want to be on the.
Well, and that explains,
of this
I don't know if
issue.
you remember, Councilor Corey Robinson did a post a long time ago about finding needles looked unused over by the Utopian sculpture over by HCID. And I was kind of looking at the picture and looked at it and thought, they look new. Who would just dump a bunch of needles? Well, you would if you brought back 11 used ones and got 20 and you only need one. I would throw them on the ground too, because they're they don't carry a lot of stuff. Right. So just leave them for your friends in Utopia Park.
Crazy stuff.
It is crazy stuff. Well, Teddy,
Melanie,
as always, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll be looking forward to your weekly columns and articles, and your everyday columns and articles, and of course the Sunday column as well. I didn't even ask you about whether ICE suppressed the vote. I had a little fun with that column, by the way.
I saw that. I didn't bring it up, Teddy.
Did ICE suppress the vote in the acre?
I think you are complicit.
Thanks so much to Melanie Gilbert. Thank you for tuning in as well on the Daily Pulse on this Tuesday, September 16th. Tomorrow, we'll have Patrick Sullivan, former general manager of the New England Patriots, whose family has Lowell roots. His grandfather, Billy Sullivan, and great-grandfather actually were in business here in the city of Lowell. We'll tell you all about that. We'll see his connection. Naturally, we're going to tell some good old Patriot stories from the old days with Pat. He'll be joining us with Chris Boucher. I don't know what I have yet on Thursday. And then remember Friday, the Daily Pulse Live show. Leslie Boder, 10 a.m. will be here along with Lindsay, our newest podcast sensation here. We'll be doing a live show and taking your comments as well on the Shaw Farm Pulse line. An opportunity for you to text in and become part of the fun. So keep it tuned here. It's the Daily Pulse each and every day here on InsideLowell.com. Until next time, everybody stay safe. Enjoy this gorgeous weather. Again, what a great September we've had weather-wise so far. And I'll see you on the other side.
I saw